Also, guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to part 2 of the sort of mini series, I guess, of from Johnny Harris about the World Cup. And this one is what Qatar doesn't want the world to see. And I mean, yeah, I probably know a lot about this sort of stuff because it's all over the news right now, and you can't not see it. But maybe we're going to learn some more here. I don't know. I'm assuming we might learn a bit more than I don't actually know, or that I haven't seen or heard about. But yeah, I'm recording this 1.5 hours before England play, so. I mean, I don't know if that means anything to you. Also, when this is posted, I think the USA would have played. And my prediction for the USA-Wales game, I'm going to say 1-1. I reckon 1-1. I reckon the USA will score first. And then they'll sort of control the game. And then Wales will get, like, one of their tall strikers. And he'll score a jammy goal. But, you know what, that's just the World Cup for you. But, yeah, we're going to jump into this game and see what this video explains, and yeah, let's just jump into it.
We found something in our reporting. Something happening here in the one big city in Qatar. A place the whole world is looking at right now.
Tell you what's insane about this World Cup, right? Like, you got the World Cup in the US, Mexico, and Canada in 2026. It's spread out in so many cities. Qatar is so small, it's pretty much built around one major city. You've got all this going on in one city. It's nuts.
An invisible border drawn to
Cup.
trap human beings, to make them work, to make them build. I want to show this to you. So let me take you back to show you how we ended up sending a camera to someone and teaching them how to shoot undercover in Qatar, while simultaneously capturing interviews in rural Nepal, and how I ended up here, staring for hours at maps drawn by the Qatari government. All of this to shine a light on something that Qatar doesn't want the world to see.
All of these have been emptied very recently.
Hey, I need to show you something. I've been looking at maps of Qatar because the World Cup is going there. When the world is going to be fixated on one place, you got to look at all the maps. I've been on the government website of Qatar looking at their zoning maps. This is the city of Doha, the capital of Qatar. But look at this. The whole city is yellow, and there's this one little shape of blue. Doha industrial area. I know we're talking about zoning. I think something's up here. I've been trying to map this, like throw it on like my other tools to map it and see if there's like what this could be. And it's not totally making sense. It's kind of cut off from the rest of the city. There's another municipality kind of in between it and Doha, but it's a part of Doha. Usually when you have weird zoning like this, there's something going on. Since Qatar got awarded the World Cup in 2010, there's been all sorts of issues with their labor conditions and all of that. And I think this has to do with that, but I don't totally know. The World Cup is happening in a few weeks. I want to go to this place. I need to reach out to Cami, one of our research producers. We're gonna dive into this. We're gonna figure it out. We're going to Doha, folks. Hey Cami, I want to go to Qatar before the World Cup to look at this one part of the city that's completely zoned differently. I think it has to do with like the labor situation there. I can't not print it. I'm going there. We have to find a fixer, local producer, someone on the ground who can help us not get arrested. I will follow up tomorrow with more details. Going to Qatar. Ding, 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 ding.
Johnny, yes, let's do it. This sounds
Christmas
like
song.
a really great story. I'll happily go to Doha with you. I'll start researching right now.
I'm going to Qatar.
Congratulations. I just want you to be smart.
I've been doing some research and I don't know how easy it's going to be for us to film places, especially in the industrial area. From what I've read,
Bro, even now, I mean, if you're following it, you're seeing there's like reporters, like obviously when there's a World Cup or whatever, there's like reporters everywhere, like doing all just their work, sort of promoting the World Cup. Bro, people aren't even allowed to like film in certain places, and you'd expect if it's a big TV company for the World Cup, they'd be allowed to do that kind of stuff then. But the fact that they aren't allowed to do that, I can only imagine how hard it would be people just to sort of record in general there.
they're notoriously not very kind
In these specific places too. In these specific places.
to journalists.
And the best part about the Gulf is that these cities are like so like cartoonish. This is a hotel in freaking Doha. Look at this. Opening later this year. Can I stay in this hotel that looks like a freaking half pipe? I've always wanted to do this. I've never had an excuse.
Doha fixer number 1 referred me to someone else, so fingers crossed that Doha fixer number 2 is gonna work out.
Drones? Yes. Do you think they'll let me fly my drone in Doha?
No.
Why?
NATO countries are helping out doing anti-drone stuff because they're afraid of, terrorist drones coming in. So
Wait, but what about just my DJI drone?
they're sending out anti-drone drones to net them.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
What the
Okay, not great news. Our fixer hasn't found anybody in the industrial area who wants to talk with us. It's not looking likely that they're going to find anybody. I'm gonna keep trying to connect with anyone on the ground.
I think it's a hiding people thing. I don't know, but I'm trying to find a fixer to help me get in there.
You're gonna go in there.
Yes. I mean, it's not like some secret.
You're supposed to be leaving in a week, and we haven't found any fixers. We haven't found any people on the ground who could help us. I'm just a bit concerned of our timeline right now.
I think we found someone, a fixer, who is deeply connected with the worker population in Doha and is potentially going to help us to get into the industrial area. We're meeting with him on a call in a few minutes. Here we go. Nice to meet you. How are you doing?
Fine. Let me switch off the AC.
Did you get the proposal that we sent over of what
Yeah, proposal I read.
We're not trying to get any secretive footage. It's more just about life in the industrial area. I guess my question for you is like, if I went into the industrial area with my camera, not a big crew, but just my camera to go film.
What camera?
Like this, if I went into the industrial area with this camera and film.
Another thing, your skin color is also a problem,
Explain that. What do you mean?
Yeah, it will make, you will get undue attention.
From who do you think I would get undue attention?
Of course, the informers and, these industrial area Asian towns are patrolled by internal security forces, Al-Fazar police.
So it's not very smart for me to go filming around in that area?
Yeah.
Okay, and I think that's why we want to figure out a way.
Have you ever been to Doha? I mean, Qatar?
This is my first time. What do you think? Okay. This is not happening. This is not happening. If we can't do the shots, then the story doesn't work. Meaning, I won't go to Doha. So it's pretty important for us to know soon if this is feasible or if it's not feasible. Can you?
Yeah. I understand.
Well, it's really nice to meet you. Thank you so much for chatting. I can't safely go into this industrial area. Like, it's now clear to me. Like, every fixer has just been like, no. This guy just said it point blank. He's like, you're a white dude with a camera. Like, this is not safe.
It feels like if you go, you're just gonna get shots of shiny buildings and not actually gain access.
Yeah.
Which I guess could be cool.
No.
I mean, there's an option here where you try to find someone that could go in.
And then if we could get like a camera person in Nepal or Bangladesh or somewhere where workers have been and gone home, we could totally tell this story. The World Cup is literally a few weeks away. I got some work to do. The new plan, find someone on the ground in Qatar who will go into the industrial area and tell me why the hell the government is so afraid of me going in with my camera. Okay. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something, which is that today's video is not sponsored by any brand. Sometimes we do really deep dives into complicated and sensitive topics. It's hard to find a sponsor when we make stories like this. I want to tell you about a way that you can support what we're doing. If you're not interested in hearing this pitch from me, that's totally fine. So I'm going to put a little bar down here on the bottom of the screen. For the rest of you that are still...
I know it's for his Patreon and stuff. I mean, he deserves it. I know Patreon's useful for creators like this who don't post as much, but you know how it is. I've got a Patreon too, so I know how helpful it can be. But if you want to support him, you know what to do.
Actually accurate, that we are actually...
Let me just go...
interested and willing to support. I want to get back into this story.
This is looking like how we hard work right now. I mean, I'm not surprised. It makes sense, but really hard work right now
in this situation. Qatar is a tiny, super rich country in the desert, and it sits on the largest known natural gas field on Earth. Since their independence in 1970, Qatar got really rich really fast, leapfrogging the normal economic development process that countries go through as they grow. Usually as a country gets rich, immigrants from poorer neighboring countries migrate in to take lower-paying jobs required to keep the economy growing. Construction, hospitality, manual labor, caretaking, food services. You know what I mean. Every rich country experiences this. But in Qatar, all of their neighbors were also getting super rich super fast. So they started looking elsewhere for cheap labor. And soon there was a flow of people taking these jobs. But there's a tension here. Thanks to all this abundant oil and gas money, the Qatari government provides a luxurious welfare state to their citizens. Free healthcare, education, guaranteed jobs, subsidized housing, and literally they just get paychecks for being Qatari, for winning the fossil fuel jackpot. So Qatar needed labor from other countries, but they didn't want to let these immigrants in on the sumptuous benefits of their welfare state. So they started using this system where employers could sponsor workers to come to Qatar to work. They wouldn't be citizens or anything close to it. They would be totally at the mercy of their employer. This was called the kafala system, and it was the foundation upon which Qatar built its country.
I'm pretty sure England, well, the UK actually started it here. I watched another video on it, and I'm pretty sure the UK started the kafala system, and then when they gained their independence, they just kept it. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm not 100%, but I feel like I learnt that. And it wouldn't be a surprise because I know my country has done a lot of shit. But I mean, like in the 1930, I don't actually know when it was, to be fair. I might be talking out my
The
ass.
winner to organize the 2022 FIFA World Cup is Qatar.
So this is a giant moment. I mean, I made a whole video about how this happened. I'm not going to go into it. But the fact is that as soon as Qatar won the World Cup,
Take it in your hands.
they had a lot of work to do.
A
Because
lot.
their country didn't have a lot of infrastructure, basically any infrastructure at all, to host this thing. So wait, why were they chosen to host the World Cup if they didn't have any infrastructure? It's a long story. Again, I made an entire video about it. The fact is they needed to build a bunch of stuff in a very short time. So what they basically did is just ramp up the system that they already had, importing tons of labor from South Asia and Africa to come build their country, in this case, to build infrastructure for the World Cup. So yeah, I've been deep in the context and the history and the data for all of this, the stuff I can do from the office. But the fact is, time is running out. I need to find someone on the ground, someone in Doha, someone in Bangladesh or Nepal who can help me capture what is actually happening in these places, talk to the people there. I've been planting lots of seeds and some of them are starting to sprout. So we're getting closer. We're getting closer.
Hey, I've been talking with a journalist in Nepal who's really great and can connect us with workers who've returned home. He's done a lot of work on this and he can go out and shoot these interviews.
I'm finally just settling into the fact that I'm not going to Doha, and I'm disappointed in that because I wanted to be on the ground. I wanted to see this issue, but the right choice is to use those resources to engage camera people to go capture the right stories in different parts of the world, and that's what we're gonna do. Luckily, I've got Instagram. I also have miso soup. Hey Sandra, thanks so much for reaching out. I really appreciate it. I'm doing this deep dive on the World Cup and put a call out for people in Doha to help me out here. I was gonna be going to Qatar and I was gonna be there next week. I'm not going. I'm now looking for people on the ground to help me. And as always, a bunch of people responded. I live in a world where I can just ask for things, and there's such a supportive community who wants to help with these stories, which is just an amazing reality. Probably 15 to 20 hours over the next 2 weeks getting some shots. Can I officially, hire you as a contractor to do this? And again, all of this is 100% anonymous. We will make sure that everyone is safe. Bingo. Yes, yes, yes. I am talking to somebody in Qatar who is a journalist who wants to help me out and is excited. Oh my God, I feel so much
That's
better.
crazy how you've got this. But the internet is wild, ain't it? Like, you could be across the world and you can just get these contacts and all this stuff set up. to do a video like this, man, I don't know what to expect, but I'm expecting it to be pretty insane, man.
In
Next
Doha,
part of the
who has
video.
camera skills, who has language skills, who has journalism skills, who's excited to help, and is just ready to go. Oh my gosh. Nice to meet you.
Hello.
How you doing?
Yeah, everything is great.
Really appreciate you just like harnessing the energy on this and just being super down. And they have access to the industrial area. Yes. I want you to tell me how comfortable you feel about this process in terms of safety and security, what's sensitive, what's not. Just give me an overview of where some red lines are here. I found someone in Doha who I could give a camera to film. We're gonna call him Raj. We won't be showing his face. We'll change his voice because he could get in deep trouble for this.
First things first, everything is monitored, or like surveillance works everywhere in this country. No matter where I film, I'm also being filmed. Specifically, if you come to the industrial area, there are a few layers to what we can do and what we cannot do.
And over the next several weeks of talking to Raj, I realized that my fixation on this one blue square isn't actually the full story. It's just the beginning.
I plan to go on every street and film from inside the car, and I think that's the safest way to film and get like the vibe of what is it like to get inside the city.
We have someone on the ground with a camera that we bought them. I've lined them out on how to shoot undercover.
I actually wanted to ask you, like, how do you get along shooting footages without getting noticed?
The key to filming without being seen is to look elsewhere. You're holding this thing like you're holding an ice cream cone. You're walking around and you're looking elsewhere. And then you just smoothly, put it away and you just get really comfortable with turning it on and off. They're going to the industrial area. They are very, very cautious for a very good reason. I would like you to shoot in 60 frames a second. I'd like you to shoot in 4K. This is going to be an amazing story if we can pull it off.
Oh my days. Risky
The
though.
government of Qatar is way more insane than I expected, and we're going to take a lot of precautions to keep everyone safe. We're going to show the world what Qatar doesn't want the world to see.
So I'm taking an Uber because it's very unsafe to go on a bus. This is the bus stop where you get on a bus to the initial area. How much time does it take for you to get here? Like, it should be like 1.5 hours, right?
Raj was finally heading to the industrial area to show us exactly what this place was. But it wasn't until we heard from the people who had worked there and lived there that we began to see how deep this trap really was. Today is the day. In Nepal, a million miles away, they have been shooting interviews. Look, these are people who actually worked on the World Cup stadiums and are now back home in Nepal. You start to get to the human side of it, and it becomes way less theoretical. It's way less about these zoning maps and stuff, and it becomes about real humans, and this is where it starts to get heavy.
यो सानो बाबु पनि धेरै बिरामी भएको गर्थ्यो अब घरमा आउँदाखेरि पैसा नदेखिने उपचार गर्नलाई खर्च नहुने त्यही भएर
मेरो नाम विक्रम ताजपुरिया हो उमेर चाहिँ भयो 31 वर्ष भयो 3 वर्ष जस बस्यो त्यस्तो राम्रो चाहिँ लागेन के मलाई चाहिँ त्यहाँ चाहिँ कतारमा
त्यही हाम्रो घरको आर्थिक अवस्था खराब भएर पैसा कमाउनको लागि
As we've been setting up all these logistics and figuring all of this out, we've also been reporting and investigating the bigger context here. The industrial area, this little blue shape on the map, is actually just one of several mechanisms that the Qatari government uses to bring people over to their country, to trap them there, and then to exploit them to work, to build all the things they want them to build. Let me show you. Okay, so it's 2010, Qatar just won the World Cup bid. They have to build an unfathomable amount of infrastructure in a very short time. They do this by paying a bunch of people to go to these countries, to small villages in places like Bangladesh and Nepal, to recruit a bunch of workers to come to Qatar to build. And this is the first phase of what I'm calling the Qatar trap. Because it is here where these workers were told they had to pay a recruitment fee. Usually like...
Yeah, there's like a fee to get in, and then you get... I swear you get like so much money like that you actually earn that you can't actually keep to send back or whatever. There's like certain rules. I mean, it's probably going to go through all that, but there's so many stipulations to it. You go to Qatar in debt, and you have to pay back that debt for I don't know how long it is, but until you can pay it all back from the money that you earn. So you're basically working for the first however long for nothing because you're having to pay all these fees back. It's insanity, man.
$1,000 to $4,000 just to like get recruited to go to Qatar and work. These people don't have $1,000 to $4,000 lying around, so they often would borrow money from family or take out a loan with really high interest rates. So even before they start working, they start their relationship with work in Qatar with debt. So now you have workers from Bangladesh, India, Nepal, all over this region flooding into Qatar to start building. As this is happening, Qatar implements a law. This is a law that's meant to protect families, okay? The law says that worker groups are not allowed to live within, quote, family areas in the
Wait, so they made these laws when these people came here? Wait, what?
city of Doha. It's a little ambiguous. Well, the government later clarified that what they're referring to is bachelors. People in Qatar that are single men. Okay, so these bachelors can't live in family zones. Where are these family zones that bachelors can't live in? Is it just like one little part of the city? No.
The entire city?
To clarify, they released a map that looks like this.
Yeah.
Everything in yellow is a family zone, a place where bachelor workers are not allowed to live. If you project it onto like a real map, you will see that this is the entire city basically. And then they reserved one little plot of land, a city away, still zoned for Doha, this little blue shape where these bachelor workers can live. Oh, but they made a few exceptions. Anyone who works at like markets and barber shops, restaurants, oh, and white collar professionals who are bachelors can also stay in the family zones. So really these working bachelors is just a euphemism for guys who look like this. Guys who are there doing construction, who Qatar does not want to see in their shiny downtown area, so they reserved them a spot out here in the desert next to the sewer.
That stinks so much because it's just hidden behind like they're hiding the actual reasons probably, but it's just like when you see it like that, it's just why is it just like you're using these people to build your city up? You're flipping doing whatever, and you're not even allowing them the freedoms to choose where they want to live in certain areas. Like that's just wild to me.
Pond.
Obviously, they earn a certain amount of money, so they won't be able to live in most of the places anyway. But just to completely cut people off from that is just insanity.
The map that sent me down the rabbit hole, and now I see it for what it is. I knew something was up. I look at a bunch of these zoning maps. They're using this to put the people that they don't want to see in the places that will never be seen. So now these guys are already laden with debt because of the recruiting fees, and now they're relegated and trapped into this part of the city. The part of the city that I was not allowed to go to without getting arrested. This is where Raj is on his way to.
The fact
this
that
is
people
where we're getting
can't go to this part of the city is nuts as well. It's just so weird. It's so fishy, man.
Footage from.
15 minutes into the ride, and we're kind of starting to see these kind of accommodations where the workers live. This is one of those buses that the workers that live in the industrial area use to commute. Today is Friday, and it's a leisure day for a lot of workers. As you can see, a lot of clothes that have been washed and left in the sun to be dried.
So this is the industrial area. It's the thing I've been thinking about for a very long time, and I'm finally seeing the footage from inside. And I have to say, it's not anything super surprising. This is kind of anticlimactic in the sense that I'm just looking at like a kind of dusty, dilapidated part of town with a bunch of buildings that look the same. And yet, I now know a lot more about what this place represents. Look at this. The industrial area isn't just far away, it's completely cut off. Here's the metro system, brand new, that they were planning to build for the World Cup. This is the whole system, connects all of the stadiums and the city. You can see that they planned a couple of these lines to go out to the industrial area. This would connect the industrial area to the city. And yet, these lines aren't actually built.
Wow.
They're gonna start on these right after the World Cup is over.
Surprise, surprise.
So yeah, this place is just like completely disconnected. I think I now see that, and it's not just.
I mean, I guess because the metro stations or whatever, the metro system in Qatar was built for the stadiums, but it is just so funny how they just wait until as soon as the whole, I guess the eyes of the world are gone, they'll then build it connected to that, because obviously then any sort of person could get there and back, to that area, and they don't want international people going there, do they? That's the last of their wants and needs.
Disconnected. Unintentionally, this is very systematically, intentionally disconnected from the rest of the city. Our interviews in Nepal gave us some clarity on what it's like to live out there.
एक दिन पनि कतै नगयो रुममा मात्र खाने सुत्ने त्यो छुट्टीको दिनमा त्यही रुममा सुत्ने खाने यस्तो थियो हामी
The next phase of the Qatar trap has to do with how these people were exploited, how their rights were taken away from them to force them to work. To build the World Cup, these workers were forced to work in very horrible conditions. Look at the temperatures in Doha in the summer. Getting close to 50 degrees Celsius, close to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. They literally have air-conditioned outdoor spaces. Look at that, air conditioning outside on wheels. The stadiums themselves will have air conditioning. And yet these workers are out there doing like manual labor in this heat.
जुत्ता लाउँदा पनि अब सेफ्टी सुज हुन्छ नि उतै लाउँदाखेरि पुरा पानी नै पानी हुन्थ्यो क्या यसरी खोलेर फाल्नुपर्छ पानी त्यस्तो गर्मी हुन्थ्यो.
A lot of workers report being treated like animals, being yelled at and bossed around in totally inhumane ways.
काम गर्ने बेलामा त त्यो फोरमेन आउँथ्यो फोरमेनले चाहिँ त्यही कराउँथ्यो छिटो काम गर किन गर्छौ के रे अल्छी गर्छौ भन्थे क्या.
Behind these walls, the conditions that these people were made to live in and really given no choice on where they could live are horrendous.
टोयलेट बाथरुमको त अब कुरै छोडिदिनु तपाईको रुममा त तपाईको उडुसे हुन्थ्यो नि
नराम्रो चाहिँ एउटा रुममा 6 जना 7 जना 8 जना राख्ने रुममा त्यहाँ किचन पनि त्यस्तै थियो खाना बनाउने अब एउटा किचनमा एउटा रुम थियो सानो अनि.
Journalists and human rights organizations have actually gotten cameras back here to actually show what that looks like. The heat and conditions got so bad for some workers that they never returned home.
मलाई जाने बेला पनि अब त्यस्तो खासै रोगहरु पहिलेदेखि नै त्यस्तो निरोगी मान्छे नै हो त्यस्तो रोगहरु केही नै देखाकै थिएन. ड्युटी गएर आउनु भएको थियो रे कस्तो छाती चस्के जस्तो भयो भनेर साथीहरुसँग कुरा गर्नु भएको रे कुरा गर्दाखेरि मोबाइल हेरिराख्नु भएको थियो रे मोबाइल एकासी यस्तो छातीमा झरेपछि चाहिँ साथीहरुले आत्तिएर के भयो यसलाई ओइ भनेर बोलाउँदाखेरि उहाँ नबोल्नु भएको रे त्यस्तो उहाँलाई त्यस्तो होला जस्तो कहिले नै सोचेको थिइनँ मैले त. त्यो गफ लागेको होला साथीहरुले आउनुहुन्छ होला जस्तो लाग्थ्यो मलाई ल्याउँदाखेरि हस्पिटलको रिपोर्टमा चाहिँ हार्ट अट्याक भएको भन्ने.
Thousands of totally healthy young men died while working in these conditions. We'll likely never know the true cause of death because instead of a real investigation, the Qatari authorities come out and use these vague classifications like heart failure and natural causes as the cause of death. Doing this robs the family of answers on why their loved one came home in a box. So if these employers are so bad, why don't these employees just change jobs? The answer is they can't. For a long time, legally, they couldn't. Because the next part of this trap has to do with paperwork.
तो हामीहरु जाँदै बित्तिकै अब कम्पनीले पास नयाँ मान्छेको के पेपर आउँदैछ यसमा कति महिनाको के छ अझै अरबीमा लेखेको हुन्छ पुरै अब के पेपर हुन्छ साइन गराउँछ यताउति सबै गराउँछ.
Oftentimes, this paperwork would stipulate that these workers can't change jobs without the permission of their employers. So the status of these workers who were trapped in their little blue box on the outskirts of the city was completely at the mercy of their employers. If they left their job, they would be considered a foreign immigrant illegally there and could be arrested and put into jail. Just one more layer of the trap. And then there was the fact that these employers would often not pay their workers for months at a time, withholding wages from them and thus increasing their leverage and power over them.
What?
And with no recourse,
they were holding their wages and stuff. Wait, that is mental. After all of this, that's the last thing I would have expected, to just hold their money away from them, keeping it to trick them or to force them to do certain things. What the hell? After all this stuff, I thought that's enough. No, they want to hold their money until they get what they want or whatever it is. That is wild.
These workers couldn't do anything about it. So yes, we are now talking about forced labor with no compensation, a euphemism for modern day slavery. I know that sounds dramatic, but that's literally what is happening here. Not to all workers. There were workers who had great conditions and who got paid on time, but this system enabled firms to so deeply exploit workers because it gave them so much power over them and so little recourse for these workers to complain or do anything without being punished or arrested. So with no other options, some workers turned to their last resort, protesting.
Those worker
म
protests.
गएको म स्ट्याकको आन्दोलनमा 2-3 पटक गएको त्यो 2-3 रोडमा जाने अनि बसले पुलिस आएर भन्छ कि दिन्छ तिमीहरूलाई सेलले अनि काम पनि दिन्छ भनेर आश दिने मात्रै
They are blocking traffic.
I never knew about this.
But don't be fooled here. This wasn't some worker uprising. This type of thing is illegal in Qatar, an authoritarian police state where assembly like this is totally not okay. So what would happen is the police would show up, squash these protests, tell them that everything was going to be okay and they would get paid, and then deported a huge number of these people, got them out of the system so that the status quo could remain.
Just dehumanizing people that belong to a certain race and are brought here for certain purposes is not justified by any means.
Thanks to international scrutiny, Qatar started to make some reforms. They realized this wasn't going to fly if they were going to host the World Cup. So they started instituting things like worker hours that were not in the heat of the day, mandatory water on site so these people could stay hydrated, a minimum wage, changing the law so that people could technically change jobs without permission, compensating families for people who died working. All of this looked great on paper, but human rights organizations like Amnesty International actually have looked to see if those policies have trickled into reality, and you know what I'm going to say, they haven't.
This is the Sahinian camp. This is big walls. A lot of people live here as well.
So yeah, I really understand now what this little blue box is for, what it represents. The authorities in Doha are getting ready for this World Cup, and as the event approaches, they are making sure that anyone who belongs in this box stays in that box. Okay, this is insane, the timing of this. This is literally happening right now.
The whole thing has just been wiped out by some weird phenomenon.
I just got a message from Raj that they are evicting workers from the city, people who are...
What the actual... Right, so yeah, I'm learning a lot here. They just got rid of them as soon as the World Cup's coming around. They just like, you know what, you've done what you've needed to do. Now you can get out before the international world come here and then whatever. That's mental, man. God, it's so messed up in so many ways.
Living in the yellow area illegally because of the law are being evicted. It's a couple weeks before the World Cup, and so the timing is not surprising that they are cracking down.
Locks everywhere. Everything looks like it has been done really quick.
Literally catching people and putting them into Shanaya, which is the industrial area. I'm trying to get footages of them being evicted because a lot of them are being evicted like just with 2 hours of notice. That's what I'm trying to do now.
This is so clear to me what's happening. They're clearly starting to really enforce this like family zoning thing to get anyone who they don't want to be seen out of the center of the city. I've never done a story like this before. This is developing like day by day, and all of this reporting that we've done, I'm now seeing it play out in real time as the city prepares for the World Cup, using all of these laws to continue to hide these people, to get them out of view as all of these international visitors prepare to come.
It feels so empty, and it's only the small houses that have been evacuated.
Okay. Well, we got to the bottom of it. We know why this exists, the way it's drawn, what it means, who it's for, what it's meant to do. I did not expect that. I know what's happening behind those walls, how those people are trapped, how their families miss them, and how some of them might never come home.
अब नभएर यस्तो गर्नु पाइएको भएदेखि एकै ठाउँ बस्न पाइएको भएदेखि परिवार खुसी हुन्थ्यौँ, छोराछोरी पनि खुसी हुन्थे। अब अरूको अगाडि पनि फल्नाको बाउ छैन भन्ने त्यस्तो धारणा हुन्थेन। छोराछोरीलाई नि मेरो बाबा छ भन्ने महसुस हुन्थ्यो।
Now let's be clear, this happened well before the World Cup ever came to Qatar. And what I fear is that once we all move on, once these few weeks of playing football are over, we'll forget about everything we saw. And Qatar will have no incentive to actually do anything about this. And they'll go back to what they've been doing for decades, deceiving these workers, trapping them in their country, exploiting them, and then hiding them from view.
Damn. Fuck me, man. I lived in Doha for 20 plus years, and this is all accurate. Unfortunately, a reality everyone who lives there is aware of. The only thing you forgot to mention is that this isn't just a Qatar story. The entire Gulf region is dependent on the same kafala system to simultaneously build their nations and maintain the status quo. And that's what's scary, because I searched in the last video of his, when I was looking at like where the World Cups are going to be in the next few years. 2026 it's in the US, Mexico and Canada. 2030 it's rumored to be in Saudi Arabia, which is bordering Qatar. So it's just going to be the same situation all over again. And I'm not going to be surprised when they announce it's there, because they don't give a shit. It's actually so messed up. And the fact that you see it's all of these countries in the Gulf region, it's horrible, man. But yeah, I learned a lot here, and yeah, the dark side of the World Cup. It's sad that this is what has come down to, but FIFA will do what they do best. They don't give a damn. But yeah.